Today on Blue Values TV, find out what's happening in the future of the city of Roseville. Stay tuned. Welcome to Blue Values TV. Blue Values TV is a production of the Blue Values Coalition. Blue Values Coalition is dedicated to informing, educating, and engaging our neighbors in the governance of our communities. Look for us online at www.bluevaluescoalition.org. Our guest today is Mr. David Larson, head of the City of Roseville Planning Commission. We're going to be talking about the future of the city of Roseville and what's in store for our great city here in Placer County. Welcome, Mr. Larson. It's good to have you on our show.
Thank you.
David Larson is a longtime resident. What's it been? At least a couple years, huh?
Almost 14 now.
And you're involved not only as the chair of the Planning Commission, but you're also on the board for an organization we had on our show earlier, in fact, the very first show that Blue Values Coalition did. Tell us about that one a little bit.
Well, in addition to having the good fortune, I'm in my 6th year on the Planning Commission. I was recently elected by my peers on the Commission to become the coming chair for the year. In addition to servicing on the Planning Commission, I also serve in helping the homeless. I'm vice chair of the board for the Gathering Inn, which is the only homeless shelter in Placer County at 201 Berkeley here in Roseville. Part of community involvement includes servicing with the Roseville Police Activities League.
What do they do?
They are a law enforcement nonprofit to where we work on empowering children, wayward children, we'll refer to them as, come from difficult backgrounds, family situations that without intervention they could be heading toward gangs.
Oh, wow.
So we raise monies every year to help them with athletic programs, academic support, mentoring, outdoor activities.
Is that just Roseville, or is that throughout the county? Or?
It's actually specific to Roseville, and the only condition is the children either live in Roseville or they attend school in Roseville.
About how many kids do you think you work with in that program?
Annually, it runs into the hundreds.
Wow.
Yeah.
That sounds really worthwhile. And then you're also involved with your neighborhood association where you live.
Correct. I have been serving the Blue Oaks Neighborhood Association for 12 years now, and then the Blue Oaks Neighborhood Association is part of an umbrella organization referred to as the Roseville Coalition of Neighborhood Associations. So within Arcona, the Blue Oaks area, which includes the Diamond Creek, Diamond Woods, and Crocker Ranch areas, we're recognized as one of the most active neighborhood associations in Roseville.
So you're really plugged into our city and to our environment here in Placer County. Tell us, as the chair, of the Planning Commission in Roseville, what do you see as our future? What's happening in the future of Roseville?
Well, it can run. There's a long list I could run to, but the first things I'm going to look to is let's recognize the need for water conservation. We're currently in stage 3 drought. The City of Roseville has a mandate of 20%, and as of July, right on our website, we have hit approximately 91% of our goal for the year in water conservation.
So we got a little more work to do yet.
Yeah.
What do you recommend people to do?
It's twofold. It includes homeowners such as ourselves. We get their little statement in the mail, and we actually hit the 20% goal for our water conservation. Leading by example, I actually work with our gardener. I had him do a thorough review of the yard, making sure everything's working. There's no broken sprinkler heads and/or drip system. We've got timers set to optimize the period of times that you're watering in that regard. And then as a business owner, obviously there's avenues depending on the scale of the business that can adopt practices as well.
What else do you see in our city going forward?
Oh boy, just kind of looking at the crystal ball. Part of it is recognizing the good fortune we're in the economic status, that we've survived the bust. We survived the most drastic economic recession, second to the Depression. What I see both in current conditions and in the future is to maintain fiscal responsibility. I'm a staunch supporter of living within your means when it comes to a budget. In addition to that is actually maintain and grow the economic viability of the city.
And how would you do that? What kind of things do you see to grow the economy of our city? One thing that we're sure we want to avoid is turning Roseville and western Placer County into just a bedroom community for the city of Sacramento. What kind of things do you envision?
Well, I'm going to go back because you make a statement. I want to answer the first part of your question. To grow is employment.
Yeah.
If you look at the city of Roseville, we're a net employer. We are a net job employer.
What do you mean by that?
The city of Roseville virtually doubles in scale on a daily basis given the number of people that actually come into our city. To grow, I see...
So you're saying more people come into Roseville to work
Yes.
than leave it to go work elsewhere?
Yes.
That's cool.
Well, and relative to the scale of the city, as the population goes, we almost double in population daily with people coming into our city to work.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
So people are coming from the neighborhood communities around
Correct.
Roseville to work there.
And to answer the first part of your question, I see large employers as key. Green tech, high-tech companies are good examples that I'd like to target. That I see that with the larger employers, that provides more opportunities for families to be able to grow here. And because the two main revenues that we have as a city are sales taxes and property taxes. So more employers, more taxes. More people shopping, sales taxes, etc., property taxes, homeowners, etc. You can see the positive relationship.
That can be good for the city, David, but when it comes to jobs, you got to look at the quality of jobs too. Service jobs are nice, they're nice in number, and they do bring in sales tax revenue and so on, but they're not necessarily living wages. And so what do you see that we can do to attract not just jobs to Roseville, but good jobs? Jobs that earn living wages and jobs where people make enough to basically grow our economy even further.
Well, I see kind of a spectrum. Because if you look at the city now, between our retail sectors, the private employment sectors, we have some small business owners as myself. You know, as an insurance agent, I'm a small employer. Then we have large corporate employers. And it's going to build onto your question. Education is a very significant employer within our county. Then if you look at the hospitals, Sutter and Kaiser are two examples of key employers in our area. But you're going to see from that, with the type of large corporations I'm referring to, subsequently you're going to see more demand on retail. So you're going to see smaller businesses coming into the fold, etc. So I think collectively you'll see it.
But you know, you can take the attitude that if you build the infrastructure and build a great community like we have around Roseville, they will come. But that's not necessarily sufficient. They won't always come unless you go and market what you actually have. So as a member of the Planning Commission in the city of Roseville, do you see efforts where Roseville actually tries to market itself to large potential employers?
Absolutely. I want to just cite a condition. The Planning Commission itself doesn't, by practice, actually go out and recruit, though if I was asked as a representative, I'd be happy to. So it's just recognizing that that condition doesn't exist. The city of Roseville does have an economic development group, fundamentally, absolutely out there marketing and recruiting at this time.
So I can presume that there is some such activity occurring somewhere at the county or city levels to attract those kinds of large international transformative type of opportunities.
Absolutely.
Well, that's a little more reassuring.
Well, I'll give you a good example because it speaks beyond your question. The application for the conference center. There's a proposal that is coming up before the council. It's already passed the Planning Commission, and there's a 10-story conference center that is going to be proposed over there just north of the Galleria Mall.
Right.
The city city representatives have traveled to South Africa with the to visit representatives of, I believe, the corporation called S3, and they're in discussions in bringing a nonprofit organization, an international company, over in partnership to build that conference center. So there's a good example going on right now.
And that should bring in conferences and also raise and boost the local economy.
Absolutely, but it builds on your inquiry in terms of how do we recruit these big companies.
Sure. Sure, that's one of the necessary things that companies will look for, is that kind of infrastructure besides just transportation and education and all those other things that we like to have too. But now, City of Roseville, Placer County enjoys having a great infrastructure for transportation and so on, but these things don't come cheap. They require maintenance. So we've got a nice highway infrastructure with Interstate 80 running right through Roseville, but that takes money to upgrade as our communities grow. We've got a marvelous, one of the best rail systems in the western United States, but that carries with it some potential problems as well. I want to address that a little bit. So if we've got this marvelous rail system, and let's say that we see increased shipments of oil, crude oil, going through the city of Roseville on our tracks, should we be concerned about increased risk of an accident or basically the safety of our people here?
Sure. Actually, you throw out a lot of information. I love your questions. I want to break them down.
Good, okay.
All right, so let's look at the infrastructure. I come from the Bay Area, and historically I could go through 5-6 towns in 20 minutes with all the infrastructure they have out there. That's no traffic. Okay? Out here, our infrastructure is sorely lacking. So I absolutely will politely disagree in perspective if you measure the infrastructure from a large populated region as I grew up in as to where we're at now. I kind of jokingly say anything east of Sacramento, a right or left-hand turn is a half an hour without traffic. So you're looking at Sunrise or Hazel. We're in dire need. If you look at the infrastructure, kind of a snapshot in time, the most recent activity that we've had was the widening of Interstate 80 at the Sacramento-Placer County line just east of the interchange of Highway 65 and 80.
Right.
So
that was about 2011?
2011. Yeah.
Yeah.
So right now, the Placer County Transportation Planning Agency is aggressively working on finding monies needed because the interchange at I-80 and 65 needs to be improved, and it needs it now.
And we've known this for quite a while.
Correct.
But these highway projects don't happen overnight, it seems.
Correct. They can, I'm a realist, and when you're looking at the estimates, we're talking decades between the need and the available monies which will make this happen.
Well, let's take a look at another recent project that just is almost complete, and that's widening Highway 65 and expanding it, the Lincoln bypass, going around the city of Lincoln. That's nearing completion. We've just about completed or completed phase 2 at this point. Phase 3 work will start soon. But that's a project that's taken 10,
Decades.
15, 20 years to actually do. So improving the Highway 80-65 interchange is going to take 10, 15, 20 years at this point.
Sure.
Highway 65 itself. I drive that stretch of Highway 65 between Blue Oaks and Interstate 80. It seems to always be jammed.
It's in addition to being a planning commissioner, I'm also a consumer. I'm a resident of the city, and I couldn't agree with you more. So if you look at the corridor between Interstate 80 and Highway 65 going up into Lincoln, there's two different interests here when it comes to the monies. If you're looking at the interchange between Interstate 80 and 65, the monies are going to come from the federal level. If you look at the monies required for the Highway 65 route between 80 up towards Lincoln, that's slated to be paid for by development impact fees. That budget alone is estimated to be at about $100 million.
Wow.
So where's the money, how long it's going to take to get that as compared to what the need is. And as recent as this morning, when I left to go to an appointment over at the Highland Business Park, Pleasant Grove and Highway 65, I came to a virtual stop when I just got onto 65 southbound from Blue Oaks.
Yeah,
so
it seems to happen all the time, doesn't it?
the need is there now.
Yeah, the need's there now. So what can we do besides wait for another 10, 20 years to resolve that problem?
Well, I'm confident that the relationship between the city, the county, and the state everybody's doing as much as they can, as fast as they can, between the reports, the environmental impact reports that need to be done, secret requirements, etc., and finding the monies. Because it's not a question if of the need, but I'm confident all efforts are being exercised now to make this happen as soon as possible. But the reality of it is, we're talking decades.
What about our rail system?
Going back to your question in terms of safety,
Yeah.
It's a multifaceted situation. Union Pacific owns the rail yard there. They have a long-standing history with the city. It's a very positive partnership. The city of Roseville works very closely with representatives of Union Pacific in terms of pollution monitoring, noise control. There's quarterly siren alerts that go on to help notify the city. We're reminded with incidences that happened back in the 70s with the massive explosion. I believe it was military ammunition that exploded, and this more recent in Lincoln, with just a couple of years ago, we had a significant fire there.
Right.
But between state federal regulations and also the city of Roseville has a hazmat team on standby 24/7 to support, so I feel largely we're in safe hands.
We're in safe hands. Should an incident occurs, we've got containment and we can fight those kind of disasters, but the disasters can still be disastrous.
Yes.
And really the concern is, with this infrastructure that we've got, and there's more of a possibility of people using it, perhaps not following all the regulations, but creating a dangerous situation. And I think some people are concerned with increased transportation of flammable, dangerous oil through the city of Roseville.
Sure, absolutely. Is there a concern? Absolutely, there is, genuinely. And you've got a balance between the concerns, because you don't want to discount that. I'm a risk advisor professionally. I'm all about safeguards. What are the adopting best practices, what have you. But I'm going to remain confident and optimistic that the current relationship between Union Pacific and the city specific, because they're in Roseville, per my interest as a planning commissioner, absolutely all regulations are being followed, safety protocols are in effect, etc. So I'm confident.
Well, let's talk about another thing that I think we're trying to do around Roseville and around Placer County, and that's in the field of education, specifically higher education. There had been proposals for a couple of different colleges to come to Placer County. It's always evolving. It wouldn't necessarily be in the city of Roseville. It would be just outside of Roseville, but very close to it. Can you tell us a little bit about that and where it stands and the impact it might have on our community?
Sure. If you look at the history, particularly in the most western side of Placer County, there's land owned by a private developer, Socopolis. This is a very well known name regionally. And on the ballot, boy, I'm guesstimating, I don't know how many years ago, there was a ballot motion to work with the county and having the land donated and supporting a university be built. That didn't actually pass. More recently now, there's discussions of Sacramento State working with the city and or the county in bringing a university here. The tentative location is in the northern part of the county. You're saying northwestern, but I'm just thinking north with respect to Auburn.
I'm thinking the most northern point is probably around Lake Tahoe. But
in the area that's bordered between the city limits, the Diamond Creek, Diamond Woods, and Crocker Ranch areas, foothills as it goes up to now, all the way to the western west of the Fitiment Farms area, there's an area known as Placer Ranch. It's undeveloped. It's currently owned by, recently purchased from Eli Road by West Park Communities. This is again a well-known developer in the area. This is all in discussion phases right now. So the county and the city are working together collaboratively in encouraging and focusing on bringing, hopefully, Sacramento State to our county. That again lends itself to yet a valuable resource to recruit larger employers.
No doubt.
Think about it in terms of the turnkey type of living we get to provide, from education, parks, retail, shopping, low crime.
Yeah, those are, it's absolutely
park,
a fantastic development. Let's talk a couple things about that, though. A timetable for something like this to happen? It's not a fast thing that happens overnight, is it?
Sure, no.
What kind of a time frame are we talking about?
Boy, you know, I really don't feel I'm going to be offering you a responsible answer because this is
Safe to say at least 5-10 years?
safely.
Safe.
5 to 10, sure.
At 5 to 10 years. Now, building another large institution like a Sac State College in that area, what's that going to do to our traffic? What's that? I mean, we talked about Highway 65 and where it stands now. It's going to be 10 to 20 years before we can broaden that. If we do something like that, isn't it going to make that situation that much worse?
Without the improved infrastructure, absolutely, I would agree with you. But
They
then-
kind of need to go hand in hand.
But you look at the chicken and egg, right?
Yeah.
So as the developments ago, and let's focus on the Highway 65 corridor, this is slated to be paid by development impact fees. So as we're seeing, and I'll use Baselines as another example over on the west side of Roseville, that in working with the staff, it's very clear as the money comes in, as the developers further develop, that's when the improvements
Get
occur.
made.
So the anticipation would be that with this development such as the university or the development of the Placer Ranch specific plan, that it would be paid for proportionately and proactively, that the improvements are happening in line as the area builds out.
Now, certainly for things that can be paid for by money, you can do that. What about things like water? Which, you know, if you ain't got the water, no amount of money is going to help you necessarily. So, if you build large institutions like that, you require a better infrastructure for water. We're in the drought year this year. The drought may end, it may not end. There's no way of telling what's going to happen in the future. But unless we do something about our water situation, how much growth can we really have in Placer County before we address that particular problem?
Well, I'm not a water expert, but I do want to cite some conditions that I am familiar with. The City of Roseville has 3 water suppliers that we partner with.
Right.
The volume of the contracts we have available to us are sufficient for much larger populations as it stands now. The constraint that we have is all the water comes through Folsom. Then it's treated at the water plant in Granite Bay, and then by gravity is fed throughout the system. That's in effect for Roseville as it largely stands, specific for the western side as well. Beyond that, we have the aquatic storage and recovery, right? We have the wells,
Right.
given the aquifer. Now, what is unique to Placer Ranch, because this is a question I get asked as a planning commissioner, how do you plan all this? And then what about the water?
Right.
So it's not a matter of if we have enough water. The constraint is based upon how much water is taken out of Folsom. Because earlier this year, there was discussions of a dead pool.
Right.
That means the water can't be taken out. Therefore, water is going to be taken out of the ground, right?
Yeah, but then I read that all across the state of California, we are taking more water out of the ground than is possibly going in there. So at some point, there's reason to believe that, hey, is groundwater even going to become in short supply? At what point do we really start worrying about the impact all of this has on our future development?
I say now, but I want to go back a step. Specific for the Placer Ranch interests, that their actual supply of water, this is all in the tentative discussions now, so there's nothing formal as an application goes, et cetera, currently. But the water would be able to come from resources not requiring Folsom. So that's a very unique condition about that.
And that is
specific
true
plan.
already for parts of Placer County.
Yes.
The city of Lincoln, for example, does not get water out of Folsom Lake. There are other places that we can get water from that don't rely on Folsom Lake. To be honest with you and to be fair to our viewers, Placer County, amongst the counties in California, is in a relatively good position with regard to water availability. But with the whole state facing challenges in that area, we've got to be concerned even here in Placer County.
And I want to affirm what your comments are, Jack, because look, and this is my content, this is my planning commission hat, kicking on again. This is a self-evaluation after 6 years. I ask, how do you know where you're going if you're not measuring where you've been?
Yeah.
Right? And one of the very positive things I see about the city and the development practices is we are ongoingly incorporating technology to utilize conservation efforts. So we're actually doing this now in preparation, because people ask, well, how can you look at planning or development if we've got water issues now? Well, planning itself is a multi-year, multi-decade consideration. So
Yeah.
right now we're in a drought. What does that look like long term? But current practices is that we do adopt conservation efforts now between solar, recyclable water type of thing, paseos, which are small open, grass areas, et cetera, open space. So this is occurring now.
And you've got to trust us that on the one extreme, you can take the position that, hey, the water problem will go away, I'm going to go ahead and do whatever I want. But there's the other extreme too, and that's equally invalid, and that is, hey, we really should put a moratorium on all development until we figure out the water situation. That's unreasonable.
Agreed.
It's not something that's good for our communities either.
Agreed.
You've got to take a middle position, and I think what you're describing is exactly that middle position, that, look, you're going to stay involved with trying to figure out water solutions down the road, but you're also going to continue with intelligent development of our community and a planned development.
Absolutely, and your comments are largely accurate too in your thinking. The city of Roseville requires developers to have the water in hand before they can build.
Right.
That's a standing condition.
That's a water guarantee that's based on existing supplies.
Mm-hmm.
And there is always going to be a question of what's the assumption on those existing supplies, and are those really going to be available in the future? There's caution.
Absolutely.
And I think that's really
Rightfully
all
so.
we're trying to say is there's
Rightfully
caution.
so.
And your planning commission is well aware of that caution and is acting on that behalf. Quite a challenge. What do you
Yes.
think of your involvement with the planning commission? How has the experience been for you so far?
Well, sometimes life is going to be much greater, or is much greater, than you realize it's going to be. And if you would have known me in '01 to say, hey, David, here's your history, including now being chair of the Planning Commission, I'd be looking at you like you're crazy. For me, it's very rewarding. And as an individual, I'm not complicated. I'm blessed. I give back. I started out my community presence, like I said earlier in my comments and introduction, no community presence, no income, no clients. Literally, I left corporate America. I left a very attractive income, lived off my savings for 2 years, and built my business from scratch. But as the business does better, so does my involvement in community participation. It's just very, very rewarding. I feel that, because part of my history too, and we didn't even cite this, I served 3.5 years in the Parks and Recs Commission prior to serving on the Planning Commission. Mm-hmm. But it's tremendous training. It helps you develop an overall foundation of understanding on what the responsibilities are to run this city.
Now, you mentioned earlier the accessibility of people in the city government and stuff. That includes yourself as a member of the Planning Commission. If our viewers have some comments or concerns, how can they reach you to express those concerns?
That's great, and I welcome you to know me. I'm a huge community advocate for participation. You hang around me, I'll get you involved.
There you go.
But for anybody who would like to reach me, I'm local at 916-788-4215, which is my office.
Very good. So viewers can get in touch with you. They can let you know what they think and where we want to go. On Blue Values TV, we're always trying to encourage our viewers to get engaged in our local government, the governance of our communities.
Absolutely.
So I absolutely encourage our viewers, get involved, get engaged. I think that's our show for today. Thank you so much for being with us. It's been a great conversation.
Thank
you. Look forward to seeing you again over here. And for all of our viewers, I want to thank you for joining us. And until next time, good night.